Welcome to the Phillip Jordan Sports Podcast, a compelling discussion of local, regional, and national sports stories with intriguing guests. Now, here is your host, the self-proclaimed Wiregrass sports guy, Phillip Jordan.
What's up, y'all? Welcome into today's episode of the Phillip Jordan Podcast. I am Phillip Jordan from Last Word on College Football and 96.9 The Legend out of Dothan, Alabama, where I am the in-studio host and producer for Dothan Wolves Football. Got a fantastic show planned for you guys today. I'm going to be joined by Coach Max Howell. Spent many years here in the Southeast as an assistant coach, both at Florida State and Ole Miss. Spent over 20 years in sports talk radio. So Coach Howell is very well connected, very knowledgeable what's going on in college football in the Southeast. So had a great time talking with him on Monday evening. We talked about Ole Miss, that was in there, but one of the big conversations we had were about the upcoming 2020 college football season, what he's hearing, stuff he thinks could happen or will happen with the scheduling and stuff like that. And we also look back at Ralph Black, legendary Troy football, basketball, baseball announcer from 1976 to 2002, 26 years doing that for Troy, called 4 national championships, and a 2016 member of the Troy Sports Hall of Fame. Coach Howell knew Ralph Black, so get his thoughts on the legacy of Ralph Black. But before I can get Coach Howell on the line, I'll let you guys know you can find me in the podcast. Of course, you can follow me on all social media at PJordanSEC. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, all your favorite podcast platforms. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe, rate, and review. The show is also on YouTube, which this is an audio-only edition of the podcast. But if you are listening on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and leave a comment. Same thing as the Apple Podcast reviews. If you leave a comment on YouTube, I will read it on a future edition of the show. And you can always email me at sportstalkphilipjordan@gmail.com. Now let's get into my conversation with Coach Max Howell. Everybody joining me today on the podcast is Coach Max Howell. Of course, he played at Troy State University. He was also part of the coaching staffs at Florida State in 87, 88, and Ole Miss 89 and 90, and longtime sports talk radio host there in the Southeast. And Coach Howell, I do appreciate you coming on once again. We can talk some football.
Phillip, this is a great time of year. Of course, we're under some different circumstances this year. Of all the years, I was 32 on the sideline and 25 in the radio and TV business. And I believe this is the first time ever that, we've had this many problems that had to be decided. As you well know, by this time of the year, we've had media day in the SEC, and, everything's ready to go for kickoff in the preseason game. And this year, Alabama was going to play Southern Cal. And, we had, I think Ole Miss was going to play Baylor. And the next week, Auburn was going to play North Carolina. I mean, we had a bunch of preseason games already lined up, and all that went away. So I'm excited now about how the decisions are going to come about all the way, we're just talking, all the way from the high school level to the NFL, because there's still so many questions that have to be answered.
Yeah, it's interesting because when the pandemic first hit our country, in March, you were kind of thinking, okay, basketball didn't happen and baseball got pushed off. But we were thinking, we're sitting in March, like football's gonna be fine. By the time August, September gets here, this thing's gonna be gone. We will be fine. But now it's kind of like we're sitting here mid to late July. It's kind of like you're kind of wondering what kind or if we will have a football season.
Yeah. Well, I think a plus was for the college, and of course I've spent most of my time at the college level, but I think that basically with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 stepped it up and said, hey, we're going to have a season. Now we'll work the details out. I think that was a plus. I really do. And I know the SEC, a lot of the SEC people, and I've talked to Keith Carter and John Cohen at Mississippi State, and a bunch of others, Scott Strickland down at Florida. They all wanted to gather the information, and of course, Coach Sankey with the SEC office last week came out last Monday and gave this long political speech about why they wasn't going to announce right now. But I'm wondering, in all fairness, I wonder if some of the decisions hadn't already been made, and they're just trying to work the details out first. I mean, whatever it is, whichever way they're going to go, I think we're going to have college football. We already know we're going to have high school football. And the NFL's already said we're going to have the NFL. So the colleges almost have to play. Now, some smaller leagues, as you well know, have announced that they aren't going to play. Well, they can't afford to play. They can't afford to test. Some of the leagues that the governor in that state has said, okay, you can put a team together, but you got to test them once a week. At $50 to $100 a piece, you got 70, 85 kids. They can't afford it, but they don't have the budget for that. So they just cancel. I talked with Troy today, for example, and right now they've already had one school cancel off of their schedule. They're waiting on NC State and Tennessee as to what each respective conference says about them playing an outside the conference school. So, see, there's still a lot of problems they've got to work through.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's one thing which I've kind of always known this, because obviously doing this, you keep an eye on what's going on. But I think a lot of people who didn't know, who are just casual fans that didn't keep up with this stuff, they don't realize how important, when the Power 5 and Group of 5 are together. Of course, the Group of 5, they help the Power 5 fill out their schedule. But those big money games, when like Troy going to Tennessee, those kind of games there, those are huge for those universities, because they really need that money to help with their budget and just to kind of keep their athletic program growing. And on another thing, I think people are now realizing how important football is, because, I mean, you could look at, I think, a scenario, maybe not. I mean, if football don't happen, there's going to be a lot of other sports that aren't going to happen after them.
Phillip, yeah, the money situation is probably most important for them right now. And I said I talked to Troy. Troy would miss $1.1 million out of the Tennessee if that got canceled. The NC State would be a home game for them, and also the team out of Arkansas would be a game for them. So that's 3 games out. Out of their schedule, and that's in one. The Tennessee game is a $1.1 million payout, and Troy absolutely needs that. And I think that's overall where so many fans don't realize that these schools have to have those gate receipts to pick up the money, the extra money for these sports that don't generate any money. The golf team, the swim team, sometimes even girls softball, some strong sports. But they don't have budget unless they pull the money in through the football program.
Yeah, and that's the thing I've been telling people, like, these schools, that's why they need a football season, and then if everybody goes only conference games, only if the SEC, Big 12, and ACC do it as well, I mean, in your opinion, do you think the Group of 5 would even play?
See, that's where quickly I'll tell you, I've done a lot of research in the last 2 weeks, and here it appears that the common denominator is that they're going to have 3 options out there. If the league says, if the SEC says, okay, we're going to play 10 games only, then basically that will probably be an 8-game SEC schedule and probably a Power 5 opponent, and then maybe an FCS opponent. NCAA has already allowed, if you have the smaller schools, for example, if Ole Miss played Southern Miss and Delta State, for example, those 2 would count in a 10-game schedule toward the qualifications for a playoff. That's something that has not happened before. They would allow 1, but they've never allowed 2 of those schools. So I think in some of the people I've talked to at that level now are concerned about contracts with schools that they already have contracts with. How are they going to drop them off and not get paid? Particularly, and I talked to the folks at Tennessee. If Troy can't play Tennessee, and yet Tennessee's playing somebody else in their place, they're going to have to get the full payout, which is $1.1 million. If Tennessee tried to cut them out to no money, then lawsuits will come up. So those are all the things that are having to be worked out right now. And probably the reason the SEC has not announced the Group of 5, that's going to be questionable. Some of those schools are going to be okay with it and can get a schedule, some of them won't.
And when the Big Ten announced it, and then, of course the Pac-12 followed them, and I may not make any friends if anybody from the West Coast listens to this, but it seems like the Pac-12 just does whatever the Big Ten tells them to do. But those two kind of like work together in unison almost. Whoever's in charge of those conferences. But I got to think about that. Shouldn't that be something? And I know, college football, college sports different than pros. You don't have a commissioner. But I just felt like that was a decision to go conference only, that if you're going to do it, like all 5 of those conferences and Notre Dame, that should be something y'all all work together on. And it just seems like there's just 5 different leaders. And sometimes for me, as just watching it, it seems like with college athletics, there's just no leadership, no direction. It's just kind of like everybody just kind of does what they want to and just hope it all lines up correctly.
Well, I think you're right on that. That's obviously what's happened in the past. I'm going to tell you, I've stepped way out in some of my interviews in the last few days, and I think this is going to be an opportune time for the Power 5 to start their conferences and pull out of the NCAA and create their own governing body. And I think the schools that are left, the Southern Miss, the Troy, the Memphis, the Central Floridas, the Appalachian States, the schools that have had good programs, but not now being allowed to play except, basically maybe a bowl game. I think now we're going to see some shuffles in that. Maybe conference expansion. Maybe they cut it off with budgets, for example. Even when that starts, you would think currently that you would have everybody in the SEC, their budgets would be adequate enough that the conference gave each school $43 million last year, but that's not enough. Ole Miss is $4 million in the hole right now. Tennessee just came off of getting back in the black. Their budget had been in the red for 3 or 4 years, and because of several things that happened, useless probation, no bowl money, too many athletics, too many sports. Stanford cut 11 sports off because they had 34 sports. The NCAA says you only have to have 18 to stay eligible for NCAA. But I think it's setting itself up for a division now to come about. If this thing lasts more than 1 year, I think you're going to see that Power 5 take a hard look at staying in the NCAA or maybe pulling out and forming their own group.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this today, getting ready for conversation. I was going to bring the NCAA up. To me, that used to be, you used to fear the NCAA. If you heard about they were sniffing around your favorite college or whatever, now it's like NCAA. I mean, they're afraid of the conference commissioner's president now. They don't even want to touch anybody because I guess they don't want to. Think they could do anything that would stick. It's just completely opposite from what it used to be, where the NCAA is just not feared anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think there's several reasons. They've had some lawsuits against them. They've done some things that, remember the Miami situation? They caught the enforcers for recruiting that some of the lies that came forth in the lawsuit. There's several other things that's happened, and they've lost their credibility. I don't think there's any doubt about that. However, currently under the SEC and the NCAA, that's a volunteer organization. You belong to that organization, and you pay a dues every year based on your student body. That's what the fees come from. But you have to have those to get a schedule. Now, I think that's why I think that's eventually going to go away, mainly because these schools. Coach Saban's been working 9 conference games for I don't know how long, and I think he's going to get his chance. I think he's going to get his choice this year, get his chance to do that. So, I think there's still a lot of concern about it. But when you get into talking to the average fan out there, they don't have a clue about really the inside workings of both the SEC and the NCAA, and particularly NCAA, because with the conferences now making so much money, with the different contracts for television and the rights that the ESPN has to pay to televise the games, that the small amount the NCAA gets, they get the basketball money, but that's nowhere close to what the football money is.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they don't even have they have nothing to do with the crowning of the champion in football. I mean, that's
right. Absolutely. So,
they have absolutely nothing there. I do want to move over to a team that is there in the state you are in now, Mississippi, Ole Miss. And I just want to get your thoughts, especially from a coaching perspective, what you think about this. I mean, the fact is, okay, look, and everybody has this problem, either lack of spring practice or you didn't have it at all. But you're breaking in a staff like Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin coming in. And, of course, Arkansas's got this issue in the SEC. You got Missouri and Mississippi State, too. But coming in, I mean, that's really going to you would think, put them behind some of these other established staffs because you didn't get that time in the spring to kind of get your players kind of understanding what you want to do with the playbook and stuff like that.
That is no doubt about it. It put those schools you reel off. Of course, I get as much information on Mississippi State as I do Ole Miss, but I'm actually halfway in between each school. But you're right. All of those schools were first-year coaches will be way behind. And now the schedule changed. Where they'll be way behind is having to play 8 or 9 conference games. That's what will put them behind because the talent level, they weren't able. The two new coaches in the state were not able to close out their recruiting. I will tell you, this Mississippi State's way ahead of Ole Miss right now. Just Mississippi State, I think will end up being okay, but Ole Miss is and scratched like crazy. They just released their $4 million in the red right now. That means they're unable to send their coaches on the road. They're recruiting. There's very little recruiting going on for next year even right now with them. And then Lane Kiffin, is just now been able to meet with his kids, the players are back on campus on volunteer workout. And originally they was scheduled to open up with Baylor in Houston. That game's been canceled. So, they hadn't decided how they're going to do their scheduling yet. I don't look for them to win over 5 ball games this year. And I think that, for a new coaching staff, that's not the way to – that's why the job was open and Nat Luke's no longer there. They became bowl eligible last year. Couldn't win enough to get qualify for a bowl game. I think they were 5-7 last year. See, so the improvement the fan base expects, you aren't going to see it at either one of those schools right off the bat.
Yeah, and of course, Mississippi State, and they have, I guess, a little bit of advantage with the Costello kid coming in. When I look at Ole Miss, of course, you look at Lane Kiffin, you wonder about what's he going to do with quarterbacks. I mean, you got John Rice Plumlee, who's the runner, Matt Corral, who's the passing quarterback, and then that's another thing I guess you would see with the lack of spring practice, getting those quarterbacks reps within Lane Kiffin's offense for him to figure out who's going to be the guy, because if you are playing a shorter schedule than you normally would, in a regular situation, there's less time, there's less room for error there to kind of figure out what you want to do, I would think.
Yeah, and I think in all fairness, because of that you mentioned right there, Phillip, I think Lane Kiffin's going with 2 quarterbacks. I think with a 2-quarterback system. Now, and then I think one of the other will emerge. You would have to think that, the Corral fits Lane Kiffin's offense more. But Corral is not the athlete that Plumlee is. Plumlee's a 4-4 guy that can run and turn the corner, and we showed what he did later. Almost looks like with a poor team around him. So I think those are the decisions that are going to have to be worked out on the field, and the practice scheduling now is going to have to be different. You can't, they aren't going to have the whole team on the field at one time, and they're still trying to work through 100 different problems and can't even start for another couple of weeks yet as far as getting ready to play. That's why I think from everything I've heard, it's going to be a delayed opening, maybe the 5th or the 12th of September, as opposed to Labor Day weekend. So I think they all those teams, particularly Ole Miss and State, both have got their work cut out for them because the fan base is still going to be just as avid as they have been, and think they're going to go out there and win every ball game. And of course, Ole Miss has got another major problem. Mississippi State's already called off no tailgating at Mississippi State this year. That's already off. Well, you take the Grove away from Ole Miss. That's one of their brand names. That's one of their identities. And they'll usually have as many people in the Grove as they do in the stadium. So that's going to be another problem they've got to address and try to make some kind of adjustment for.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, that's the thing that separates college football from any other sport is the fan involvement, like the game day atmosphere. Because I remember the college football games I've been to a couple Auburn games, I've been to a couple Troy games, and it's like, and a lot of times the best thing I remember just as a fan, just pure as a fan enjoyment, wasn't necessarily the game. It's going and to the tailgating, being with these other people that you don't even know. You don't even know these people, but you're having a good time and you're all there for one reason. And even if we do get, like you said, we do get some fans in these stadiums, you're probably not going to have the tailgating aspect. And they're obviously not going to have it there in Mississippi. I would doubt you would have it anywhere else, but, maybe in this state, Alabama, they might give it a shot, but just the way things go. But, that's one thing about college football that makes it great is that part of it. And that's, of course, we're in the situation that we are in, but still that is going to be a big part of it. I think a lot of people are going to miss this year the tailgating and just the fan involvement part of it.
Yeah, I think, I even read articles in the last week, and I'm sure you've seen some of them too, about, some of the sports, baseball starting with no fans in the stands. Of course, football is so emotional, the fan, but here's the deal. I've not read one, and I've tried to keep up with this thing all across the country. I've not read one conference or one school that says they're going to play, that says they're going to try to sell every ticket in the stadium. The most I've seen is 50%. Ohio State just released theirs last week. They were only going to sell 25%. Well, that's 25,000 people. That's going to look like a high school game, if that be the case. So I just think there's so much indecision or no decision being made right now, and the fans out there are chomping at the bits to know what about the ticket allotment? What about the students? How many are they going to get to go? How they're going to have to sit 6 feet. Just on and on and on about the different problems. And then what about the medical situation? If they have a stadium that's half full and and 10 people fall out sick, how is that going to be handled? See, so I just think there's so many problems yet to be looked at, and I hope it doesn't deter the decision not to play. That's my biggest worry right now.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm in the same mindset, really. Just what if one thing goes the wrong way? Will that kind of put a kibosh on the entire season?
Right.
And, lastly, before I let you go, I was wanting to talk to you about or give your thoughts on, of course, on Friday, got the sad news that legendary voice of the Troy Trojans, Ralph Black, did pass away. 26 years as the play-by-play guy there for Troy for football, baseball, and hoops. Of course, you played there at Troy, connected well at Troy University. Just for you, for people out there that didn't know, what was the impact Ralph Black had on that university?
See, I think he was one of the great first ones. So he was actually play-by-play. WTBF, I think, had just come on the air my senior year at Troy, which had been in the early 60s. And, of course, I went back in 65 and was on the coaching staff through 71. We won a championship there. But he was an integral part. I mean, he really laid the groundwork for some of the great play-by-play guys, Larry Munson, Eli Gold. We go down the list of people that are know the names today. But Ralph was doing it 40, 50 years ago. He was very enthusiastic. He was a legend, I'm going to tell you, in sports talk radio, on broadcasting. Yeah, he loved it, and he did his own radio show. He did his own production. Of course, it was different in the early days than it is now. I think he had one guy that sat with him occasionally, and he had to be the producer and the support guy. But Ralph was good enough that he could carry the whole show by himself, and he never got upset. I never saw him through the years, Phillip, that something didn't go right, or if he went off the air or whatever. His personality was even, just even keel, and I think that set him apart for me. I've known guys that take the headsets off and throw them down and get mad and all that stuff. We've seen all of that. But Ralph wasn't that personality-wise. He was, he was well thought of in that community, and it was sad to many people with his passing.
Yeah, I posted on my personal Facebook page I shared the article from the Dothan Eagle here about his passing, and I just know I met him one time. I only met him one time. And I got connected through somebody from the Dothan Eagles. He was going to give me some pointers on trying to get into broadcast. And this is before I did any podcast, any radio. This was probably 6 years ago, I think. And he was just very good, very nice. Just the fact is, I've always, remembered that he took that time. He didn't know how I was. He didn't have to do that, but he took time. I think he talked to me about an hour or two. So I remember that just kind of stood out to me. That showed me the character. So obviously he was a really a good person too. And it seemed like the kind of guy that would kind of pass on some knowledge to a younger generation to try to help out the next ones coming up in broadcasting. So that was really cool for me when I'm looking back at that.
And that's great. I'm glad you did that because that was his personality. He was always a giver, and I think that was that was before the mega egos got involved at that level. And we got him up there. I love Barry, and I think he does a remarkable job. And Barry's out of that same mode. But Ralph came along at the time when particular smaller schools like Troy didn't have play-by-play guys. I mean, they had a stadium announcer, but they didn't have a on-air presence like Troy did. And Ralph created that and held that image for a long, long time. And I know there's many people that were sad with his passing, but he made his mark in the marketplace. And I'm glad to say he was my friend, and I had a chance to know him very well.
Yeah, that was real something. Yeah, I saw him, and I saw so many people because, like I said, down here, people connected to Troy, so many people outpouring their thoughts and prayers for the Troy family and the Ralph Black family as well. And Coach Howell, I do appreciate you coming on. Before I let you go, is there anything else you got on your mind, or when it comes to hopefully the college football season we could have this upcoming year?
Yeah, my telephone's going to blow up if I don't hurry up and find something. I make so many calls every day. I'm trying to just figure out anybody can tell me something different. But I do know the the SEC coaches and the athletic directors met by the internet yesterday, and they're trying to whittle it down. I think we'll have an answer by the end of the week. I do, and I think it's going to be reasonable. Let's put it that way. I think it is going to be probably 8 to 10 games. They'll start late, a little bit later. It'll be at least 8 conference games, and then how they handle the other 2, I don't know. But I don't know, Phillip, that they've got it worked out about the attendance yet, the number of people, and I think a lot of that's going to be determined by the spikes in the virus. We had a big one this past week. Mississippi had 1,100 new cases yesterday. And that's that was a big spike. They've been put on the top 15 to 8 states right now. That if you travel out of the state, probably if you go into Florida from Mississippi, you're going to have 14 days right now in isolation before you can go into the state of Florida. So there's several things that are happening around that's going to still determine how this football season. But I am convinced that we are going to have a season under some conditions. We just don't know what they are yet.
Yeah, I'm still trying to stay on the optimist side of things with this. And once again, I do appreciate you coming on. And I hope when we do talk again, we will be talking about games we know are going to happen, and we'll be able to talk about that good stuff. So I hope we'll have that next time you do come on the show. And I always appreciate the time, Coach Howell, and I hope we could do it again sometime.
I too, likewise. Always my pleasure, Phillip. Thank you for calling.
Awesome conversation there with Coach Max Howell. As always have a good time when he is on the show. A lot of great knowledge there, a lot of great insight on what's going on. So we'll see what's going to happen. As he said there, maybe toward the end of the week, we may know something. Of course, I will give my thoughts here on the podcast. So the spring thing is still being talked about. And I see a lot of people talking about this. And if they go spring with college football, I'm just going to say this. It is all a money grab, which them playing the fall is pretty much a money grab too, with everything going on, because they need that money. You heard us talking about it there with Coach Howell. If they don't have a football season, the football is not the only thing that's going to suffer. the other athletic programs will suffer as well. So you have to have it to really fund and for the money to flow through for them other programs. But the thing about it with a spring season, I just think it's bad optics. It just won't look good because the product will not be the same because your best juniors and seniors will not play in those games. They're not going to put their body through that because they're going to say, I'm going to the combine and then I'm going through the NFL draft. I am not playing. I am not taking a chance of getting hurt. And then another thing on the safety side of things. So you're saying you're going to have a season in the spring, then you're going to turn around and have a season in the fall? No, we're always hearing about player safety in football at all levels, high school, college, pro. So how is that involved player safety for them to put their body through that in a very close time span, I guess you would say? I just don't see that as a possibility either. And even if you could convince Trevor Lawrence to play, which you will not, and I keep using Trevor Lawrence just because he's assumed as the number one pick, so that's why I keep using Trevor Lawrence in this analogy. Then you're going to ask him to go play in the NFL the next fall. That ain't going to happen either. And then now you're seeing high schools. Some states are saying we're not having any high school sports in the fall. I think if you have a senior that's really good, that knows he's going to go play college ball, I could perhaps see some high school kids saying, I'm going to make a business decision here. I have a full ride to Alabama. I don't know if I should be playing this high school football season, especially if it's in the springtime. This is time I could be training, getting ready for the college football season. And, of course, if you get the early enroll kids, they're not going to be playing. They're going to be trying to get to their college wherever they're going. So high school and college, it just does not really work to play spring season. You can do it. You can play the games, but it's just not going to be the product that you would have had in the fall. This is completely new, unprecedented circumstances we are in. I know that, so I'm not trying to make light of that, but also from the optics of football fans, I just don't know if spring will work. But what do you guys think? What do you think about potential of playing high school college football in the springtime? Leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. Leave me a comment on YouTube. Hit me up on social media at PJordanSEC. Give me your thoughts. I really would like to hear what you guys think about that. All right. We'll be back till Thursday. The plan or the schedule is Bill Bender from the Sporting News will be on the show on Thursday. So I hope you guys will tune in, check out the podcast. Then really looking forward to talking to Bill. I have not talked to Bill Bender since after the National Championship game. So we have plenty to discuss when it comes to college football. And guys, remember, like I just mentioned, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is on all your favorite podcast platforms on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel, like the videos, leave a comment. I will respond to every single one of them. Hope everybody has a good couple of days until I talk to you again on Thursday. And until then, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's Phillip Jordan Sports Podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to tune in to the next episode for more great sports talk.